You know that gut-wrenching moment when you first suspect something's off, that sinking feeling that the warmth in her eyes has shifted, that her laughter no longer reaches her soul when she's with you. That moment is more than suspicion. It's a psychological alarm, and if you ignore it, it only grows louder. You need to understand this. A woman's mind changes long before her actions do. It's subtle, almost invisible to most men, but once you see it, there's no turning back. Stay with me for a moment. Look past the anger, past the shame you might feel at even thinking she could betray you. Because the truth is, the betrayal often isn't about the other man at all. It's about unmet needs, silent resentments, and emotional starvation. And here's the secret. When a wife cheats, it's rarely a sudden choice. It's a slow, invisible unraveling of connection, where every missed conversation, every ignored emotion, every absence of intimacy acts like tiny fishes in a dam. Eventually, the dam breaks and what floods your life feels catastrophic. But it started with a whisper. If you want to survive this, you need to see it for what it really is. You need to understand her psychology. And that's why I'm talking to you like no one else will. Because most men blinded by pride and love mistake emotional distance for indifference and then blame themselves for everything. But the real truth, cheating is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of the unspoken gaps she's feeling. And whether you notice them in time is the only thing that determines if your marriage survives or crumbles. So let's strip this down to the raw, unvarnished reality. When she starts slipping away, her thoughts begin to drift long before her body does. Your intuition is screaming at you for a reason. That small, nagging unease you feel, that's your mind catching on to hers before your heart can even admit it. And the stronger you stay, the clearer you can see the patterns. Emotional clarity in these moments is more powerful than anger, more powerful than confrontation. It gives you control, gives you presence, and ultimately gives you power over what comes next. Before we go deeper, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Every insight I share is designed to put you ahead, to see through the illusions most men fall for, and to take your life and your relationship back from the chaos that silent betrayal creates. Because the real tragedy isn't her cheating, it's the blind submission to pain without understanding it. Think about the last time she seemed distant, really distant. Maybe she smiled, maybe she laughed, but something was off. Her mind wasn't with you. That's the first stage emotional detachment. And it's not dramatic, it's quiet. Most men dismiss it as stress, tiredness, or a bad mood, but the truth is far more dangerous. Emotional detachment is the first signal that her internal compass is starting to drift, and if you don't recognize it, it accelerates the moment she crosses the line. Here's what's rarely explained. Women don't cheat impulsive. Their minds start wandering months, sometimes years before any physical act. It begins with thoughts, small fantasies, imagined conversations, the emotional what if that tests boundaries. You won't see it at first because she's still performing, still managing her image of the perfect wife, but inside her attention is slipping. Her desires are fragmenting, and the emotional investment she once had in you is slowly being redirected elsewhere. You might think if I loved her enough, this wouldn't happen, but that's the trap. Love alone doesn't prevent emotional drift, emotional intelligence, presence, and consistent engagement. Do what keeps a woman loyal isn't fear, obligation, or guilt. It's feeling understood, appreciated, and desired in ways that matter to her mind, not just her body. Missing these cues is like ignoring a fire alarm while smoke fills your home. You can smell something burning, but you hope it's nothing serious. By the time the flames are visible, it's nearly impossible to contain the damage. And then comes the dangerous part, rationalization. As her emotional distance grows, she begins rewriting her story in her mind. I deserve more. He doesn't see me anymore. I can't tell him this. These thoughts are rehearsals for decisions that can shatter your life. She's not cruel. She's confused, frustrated, and searching for fulfillment. She no longer believes exists in your relationship. If you stay unaware, you'll never see the warning signs until they manifest in betrayal. The key is awareness. Men who survive this and come out stronger aren't stronger physically. They're sharper mentally. They learn to recognize these patterns without panic. They watch, they understand, and they adapt. They don't fight shadows, they illuminate them, calling the hidden dynamics into the light before it's too late. That's how you protect yourself emotionally and position yourself as someone who commands respect, attention, and loyalty, even when the current of her wandering mind threatens to pull her away. Every detail matters: the way she texts, the way she avoids certain topics, the subtle decrease in intimacy. Your ability to read these signs is the difference between devastation and understanding, between loss and power. And once you grasp this, you begin to see her psychology not as a mystery, but as a map of what's really happening inside her mind and inside your marriage. Now, let's get brutally honest. When a woman cheats, her mind doesn't flip a switch. She constructs a narrative that allows her to feel justified, even righteous. It's not always about desire. It's about what she can convinces herself she needs. You might think it's about the other man, but rarely is it. Her reasoning often begins with subtle self deception. He doesn't understand me. I'm unfulfilled. I deserve excitement. These thoughts are rehearsals in her mind long before anything physical occurs. Understand this, her brain is wired to seek emotional validation. If she feels unseen, unheard, or undervalued, her mind begins exploring alternatives. It's like a slow leak in a tire. You can feel something is wrong, but it's invisible until the car wobbles uncontrollably. When she finally acts, she doesn't see herself as the villain. She believes she's taking control of her happiness. This is the psychological trap that destroys so many men's confidence. They blame themselves, spiral into doubt, and ignore the truth. Cheating is often a symptom, not the cause. Here's the secret. Most men miss. Staying strong isn't about confronting her with accusations, jealousy, or anger. It's about maintaining your emotional gravity. When she senses your imbalance, your fear, your insecurity, your pain, it fuels her detachment. But when you remain centered, calm, and psychologically aware, you regain the subtle power in the relationship. Women respect men who see clearly, who feel deeply, but don't collapse under emotional turbulence. Strength isn't shouting, it's standing firm while the storm rages. You need to start observing patterns, not isolated moments. Notice how she reacts when you bring up intimacy, how she prioritizes her time, the way her energy shifts around others. These are clues not just to her fidelity, but to the deeper emotional disconnect that led to betrayal. Knowledge isn't just power, it's armor. Once you can read the signs without panic, you're no longer a passive player in her story. You are a strategist, a man who understands female psychology in a way that keeps him grounded, even in chaos. And here's a hard truth. You will never control her choices. You can only control your response, your presence, and the standards you refuse to compromise. Men who survive infidelity emotionally and psychologically intact aren't stronger because they prevented the act. They're stronger because they stayed anchored, protected their dignity, and used insight instead of anger to navigate what comes next. That clarity transforms pain into power, confusion into understanding, and betrayal into a catalyst for growth. This is the mindset shift most men never achieve. But when you do, everything changes. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being the architect of your own emotional survival. The hardest part isn't discovering the betrayal, it's staying strong while it unfolds. Most men crumble because they don't understand the subtle war happening inside their own mind. You see, the moment you suspect infidelity, your ego wants to react: anger, confrontation, obsession. But the more you act out of emotional turbulence, the more you lose control. The truth is, strength isn't visible, it's silent. It's the calm that comes when the world around you feels like it's collapsing. Start by mastering your internal narrative. Don't let thoughts of "why me" or "I failed" take root, their poison. Instead, recognize that her actions reflect her unmet needs, her mental drift, not your inadequacy. The moment you take responsibility for her choices, you hand her the power to manipulate your emotions. That is exactly what you must avoid. Your stability is the anchor, the unseen force that prevents chaos from consuming you. Next, observe without judgment. Every small behavior is a signal. The way she holds her phone, the subtle shifts in tone, how she avoids certain topics, these are not just signs of possible infidelity, they're indicators of emotional alignment. The men who survive this, who remain psychologically unbroken, are the ones who see these signals without panic, without acting impulsively. They catalog, they understand, and they prepare. Knowledge is your armor. Insight is your weapon. Then rebuild your sense of self-infidelity tests, not just the relationship it tests you. Men who collapse under the weight of betrayal often lose identity, confidence, and self-respect. Don't allow that focus on your growth, your goals, your physical and mental health. When you elevate yourself, you become untouchable to manipulation and emotional erosion. A man who maintains dignity, ambition, and clarity becomes magnetic even in the face of a drifting partner. Finally, embrace the paradox. You must care without attachment to outcomes. This is subtle but critical. Loving without losing control, caring without enabling, protecting without aggression. That is the psychological balance that keeps you unbreakable. Most men fail here because they confuse love with surrender. True strength is self-possession, the ability to feel deeply while remaining impervious to emotional sabotage. And when you master this balance, everything changes. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase. You command attention by presence, and most importantly, you stop being a victim of circumstance. You become the man who sees clearly, who acts wisely, and who survives emotionally unscathed, even when betrayal strikes. Here's a truth that most men never realize. When a woman cheats, she doesn't always leave. In fact, she often stays even while seeking validation elsewhere, and that's where male psychology collapses. Because you assume betrayal equals departure, it rarely does. Most women maintain two worlds. the one you see and the one they navigate in secret. Understanding why she stays and why she leaves is critical to regaining your power. She stays because part of her still craves stability, intimacy, and familiarity. It's not love that keeps her. It's comfort, routine, and the safety she associates with you, but that doesn't erase the drift in her mind. The part of her that wanders emotionally will always test boundaries even if she physically remains. Here's what men miss. Staying doesn't mean loyalty, it means calculation. She's weighing risk versus reward, satisfaction versus familiarity. Every action you take, every reaction, every display of insecurity feeds into her mental equation, and when she leaves, it's rarely sudden. The detachment has been building in invisible layers, unmet emotional needs, unspoken frustrations, and the silent realization that her world outside your relationship feels more stimulating. Men often mistake the departure as impulsive as a betrayal of love, but it's actually the culmination of a long subconscious process in which she's testing herself, her desires, and ultimately her boundaries. Recognizing this early allows you to anticipate to protect yourself and even to reclaim influence. So what's the strategy for the man who refuses to be broken? First, accept reality without panic. Denial only gives her more power over your mind. Second, understand her psychology without judgment. She's not inherently malicious. She's seeking fulfillment in the ways she knows how. Third, focus on your own presence, consistency, and self-value. When you act from a position of unwavering self-respect, you shift the dynamic. She begins to perceive you not as a source of control, but as a man whose worth is independent of her choices, a force she cannot manipulate emotionally. Finally, recognize that this knowledge isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. Men who grasp these dynamics don't just endure infidelity, they emerge stronger, clearer, and more magnetic. They understand boundaries, emotional truth, and female psychology in ways most men never will. By seeing the hidden currents behind her actions, you reclaim authority over your emotional world, even when chaos swirls around you. This is the point where most men break, but when you see clearly, act wisely, and maintain composure, you don't just survive. You command the room, the relationship, and ultimately yourself. Now let's get to the part. Most men panic over how to respond without losing yourself. When a wife drifts or betrays, the instinct is anger, confrontation, or obsessive questioning. But here's the harsh reality. Those reactions give her control over your emotional state. Every word spoken in desperation, every argument fueled by insecurity strengthens her mental advantage. The strongest men do the opposite. They respond with presence, clarity, and calculated detachment. First, stop chasing explanations that justify her behavior. You don't need to know every detail, and obsessing over them only fuels chaos. Her choices are her own, and your power comes from managing your mind, not hers. Observe patterns, note shifts, but do not beg for answers. Silence can be louder than words. It communicates that your dignity is non-negotiable. A man who refuses to be emotionally manipulated holds the invisible authority in the room. Second, protect your energy. Infidelity is a psychological battlefield. Most men allow it to infiltrate every aspect of their life, their work, health, and mental state. You must compartmentalize, acknowledge what's happening, process it internally, but never let it consume you. Strength is not suppression, it's discipline focus. Channel your energy into your goals, your physical and mental resilience, and your personal growth. When she senses your unwavering focus and calm, she instinctively respects the boundaries you've set. Third, maintain presence without attachment. This is subtle, but critical presence means engaging authentically, caring for the relationship if it matters, and protecting emotional intimacy, but without surrendering your core self. Attachment means desperation. Presence without attachment turns your strength into magnetic authority. She may drift, she may test, but your mind remains untouchable. You control your emotional responses, not the chaos she creates. Finally, understand timing. Reactions matter, but timing is power. A measured response delivered with calm insight creates respect. Rash confrontations create chaos. Emotional stability communicates dominance, not in a brutal sense, but in the sense of psychological clarity. She may act out, she may push boundaries, but when you remain composed, she subconsciously realizes you are unshakable. This is how men survive. Betrayal without losing power. You don't need to control her, punish her, or negotiate loyalty. You simply anchor yourself in truth, awareness, and self-respect. In doing so, you emerge not as a victim, but as the man who understands the psychology of female desire, the patterns of infidelity, and the unshakable power of emotional clarity. That is how you navigate her drift and come out stronger on the other side. Now, you need to hear the final truth most men never face. Betrayal is not your defeat, it's a revelation. Every infidelity, every emotional drift, every silent distance she creates exposes the hidden dynamics of her mind and, more importantly, reveals the weaknesses and strengths in yours. The men who collapse see only the pain. The men who rise see the lesson. And the men who thrive see opportunity. Here's what you must internalize. Her actions, while shocking, are not a measure of your worth. They are a reflection of unmet emotional patterns, of the silent signals you may have missed, and of the unspoken gaps in connection. That does not mean failure, it means clarity. Once you understand this, you stop reacting out of fear or anger and start operating from insight, discipline, and psychological authority. You learn to read her mind without becoming a prisoner of it. This is the point where transformation happens. Most men never get here because the pain is too heavy, the ego too fragile, or the pride too rigid. But when you maintain your dignity, your awareness, and your boundaries, you gain something no one can take away: self-mastery. You learn that your emotional state is yours alone. You control how you feel, how you act, and how you respond. She may test, she may push, she may drift, but your power remains intact, untouchable, undeniable. And here's the final unspoken truth. Surviving betrayal isn't just about preserving a relationship. It's about forging the man you are always capable of being. The man who stands tall in chaos, the man who commands respect without intimidation, the man whose clarity, confidence, and presence make him magnetic, untouchable, and resilient. Women notice this instinctively, men respect it consciously, and most importantly, you feel it in your own bones. Pain is temporary, clarity is permanent. Anguish fades when replaced with understanding. Confusion dissolves in the light of insight. Betrayal becomes a mirror reflecting not your loss, but your power, your vision, and your capacity to rise above. You do not need to win her back, and you do not need to justify yourself. You simply need to claim your mind, your dignity, and your life. Remember this: the strongest men are not defined by the loyalty they receive. They are defined by the strength they maintain in the face of disloyalty. When you grasp that, nothing can shake you, not her choices, not her betrayal, not even the deepest cut of emotional pain. You become the man who walks through fire without burning, who sees the hidden truths no one else understands, and who emerges always unbroken.